Warning, you have already taken the first step. Some stories you can forget. Some you wish you could forget. But what you're about to hear, it lingers. It stays with you in the quiet moments, in the dead of night, when the world is silent and you're alone, or so you think. These are real cases, documented, witnessed, and feared by those who lived through them. Some who investigated them refused to speak of what they saw. Others weren't so lucky. And now, you're here. Before we begin, do yourself a favor. Turn on a light, check behind you, and listen closely. Because once you hear these stories, you may start to notice things. A whisper, a shadow moving where it shouldn't, a presence watching from the dark. If you're brave enough to continue, tap subscribe before it's too late. Like this video so we know you're still with us. And tell us in the comments, do you believe, or are you about to? Take a deep breath. Let's begin. The Exorcism of Robbie Mannheim, the real-life inspiration for The Exorcist. A night of unholy terror. The room was ice cold, the candlelight flickering as if cowering from an unseen force. Robbie Mannheim sat rigid on the bed, his body tense, his eyes locked in a vacant, glassy stare. His family stood in the doorway, clutching rosaries, whispering prayers, hoping desperately that tonight would be the last. Then it began. The bed shook violently, its wooden frame groaning under an invisible weight. A guttural growl, low, inhuman, rumbled from deep within the boy's throat. The priest took a step forward, lifting his cross, his voice steady despite the growing dread in his eyes. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I command you to leave this child. A silence, thick, oppressive. Then, laughter. Not Robbie's. The sound slithered through the room, echoing off the walls, layered with voices, dozens, maybe hundreds, mocking, taunting. The boy's back arched impossibly, his lips curling into a grotesque, unnatural grin. He belongs to us, the voices cooed. You are too late. Then the claw marks appeared, deep, bloody gashes carving themselves into his flesh as if unseen hands were tearing at him. The stench of sulfur filled the air. The walls trembled. The lights flickered, then burst, plunging the room into darkness. And in that suffocating blackness, the whispers came. Soft at first, then louder, closer, until they were everywhere. Leave! The priest did not waver. He pressed the crucifix to Robbie's forehead, and the boy let out a piercing, ear-splitting shriek, a sound so unnatural, so filled with agony, that even the strongest in the room felt their resolve waver. And then, silence. Robbie collapsed, his breath ragged, his body still. The room was empty of all sound, all movement. It was over. Or so they thought. A lingering darkness. After that night, Robbie remembered nothing. The strange marks faded, the voices silenced. But some say he was never the same. That sometimes when the lights flicker unexpectedly, when an icy chill sweeps through a room, his eyes will glaze over, just for a moment. As if something is still watching. As if something never left. Would you dare? If you were in that room, witnessing the impossible, feeling the air grow heavy with something unseen, would you stay? Would you believe? Or would you run, knowing that once you've seen the darkness, it may never stop looking back? Let us know in the comments below, if you dare, the terrifying possession of Clara Germana. Sele, the girl who spoke to the devil. A pact with darkness. It started with whispers. In the dead of night, Clara Germana Sele, a young girl living in a convent in South Africa, began to hear a voice, low, seductive, speaking in a tongue she did not know, yet somehow understood. The nuns noticed her strange behavior, the way she would stare at them for hours, unblinking, as if seeing something beyond the veil of reality. Then, Clara made a confession. She claimed to have made a pact with the devil himself. At first, no one believed her. But then, the horrors began. The possession. Her body convulsed violently, her limbs twisting unnaturally. She spoke in languages she had never learned, Latin, German, even tongues long lost to history. She knew the darkest secrets of those around her, whispering them with a grin that was not her own. The nuns recoiled as she let out an ear-splitting shriek, her voice layered with something inhuman. Then came the impossible. Clara began to levitate. Her frail body, once consumed by fits, now rose several feet into the air, her eyes rolling back into her skull. The room turned ice cold, a rank smell of rot filling the air. Witnesses swore they saw shadows creeping along the walls, shifting, moving, watching. She spoke of things no child should know, blasphemous, ancient knowledge. When priests arrived to perform the exorcism, she laughed. "He is coming," she whispered. "He is already here." Then, with unnatural strength, she lunged at them. The battle for her soul. For 2 days, the priests fought against the darkness within her. Holy water sizzled on her skin like acid. When scripture was read, she screamed in agony, her body convulsing as unseen forces twisted her limbs. At one point, she attempted to strangle a priest with her bare hands, her strength far beyond that of a young girl. But as dawn broke, something changed. Clara let out one final blood-curdling scream. Her body collapsed onto the floor, her breath ragged. The room fell silent. The air cleared. It was over. Or so they believed. A soul marked. Forever. Though Clara returned to normal, something in her eyes was different. Some claimed they still saw shadows following her, whispering in her ear when she thought no one was looking. And on some nights, when the wind howled through the convent halls, the nuns swore they could hear her voice, low, distant, speaking in a language not meant for this world. Was the devil truly cast out? Or was he simply waiting? Would you risk it? If you were there, standing before Clara as her eyes turned black, as her voice echoed with something not of this world, would you stay? Would you confront the darkness? Or would you flee, knowing that once you've heard the devil's voice, he never truly leaves you? Tell us in the comments below, if you dare. Anna Ecklund, The Possession That Lasted. Over 16 years, a curse from within. It began when she was just 14. Anna Ecklund was a devout Catholic girl from Erling, Iowa. She prayed, attended church, and obeyed her parents. But then, something changed. She refused to enter sacred places, reacting violently to holy water and prayers. She could hear them, whispers from the shadows, voices that told her to do unspeakable things. Her family suspected something unnatural. A priest attempted to bless her, but the moment he raised his hand, she spat at him, her face twisting into an expression no child should make. "He is mine," a voice that was not hers growled. And so began one of the longest and most terrifying possessions in history. 16 years of darkness. For over a decade, Anna battled the entity inside her. Doctors found nothing wrong. Yet she starved herself without growing weak. She spoke of events that had not yet happened. Animals cowered in her presence. Her own family grew terrified of her. But the worst was yet to come. By 1928, priests declared that Anna was no longer just possessed. She was infested with demons. Something ancient, something powerful had latched onto her soul. It was time to act. The exorcism that shocked the world. In a small convent in Erling, Iowa, 3 nuns, several priests, and a bishop gathered for an exorcism unlike any before. As soon as the ritual began, Anna screamed, her voice shifting from a child's wail to a guttural, monstrous growl. Then she began to change. Her body levitated, contorting in ways that should have broken her bones. She vomited nails, actual nails. Her eyes turned black, and her tongue elongated like that of a snake. The priests called upon God, but the demons mocked them, laughing in a chorus of voices, men, women, children, and something far worse. At one point, an invisible force hurled Anna into the air. She clung to the walls like a spider, shrieking obscenities in multiple languages. When holy water touched her skin, she burned, releasing a foul stench so unbearable that the nuns covered their faces. The walls shook. The air grew thick with an unseen presence. Witnesses swore they saw shadowy figures moving along the edges of the room, watching, waiting. Then, as the final prayer was spoken, Anna let out one last blood-curdling scream, and it was over. But did it ever truly end? Anna was freed, but at what cost? She lived out the rest of her life in seclusion, never speaking of what had happened. Some say she was never the same. Others claim the demons never truly left her, only waiting for the right moment to return. And as for those who witnessed the exorcism, some went mad, some took their own lives, and some simply disappeared. Would you stay in the room? Imagine standing in that convent, hearing the guttural screams of something inhuman, watching as a woman defies the laws of nature before your very eyes. Would you dare stay and witness it? Or would you run, knowing that what you've seen can never be unseen? Let us know in the comments if you'd be brave enough to face the darkness. The chilling case of Arne Cheyenne Johnson, the murderer who blamed the devil made me do it. On the cold afternoon of February 16th, 1981, a brutal murder shook the small town of Brookfield, Connecticut. Blood soaked the floor of a rental property, and standing over the body of his landlord, Alan Bono, was 19-year-old Arne Cheyenne Johnson, his eyes empty, his hands still clutching the murder weapon. When the police arrived, Arne was dazed, confused. He barely seemed to register what had happened. And then came the words that would turn this case into one of the most infamous supernatural murder trials in history. I didn't do it. The devil made me do it. The haunting. Before the murder. This was no ordinary crime. Arne had been living with his girlfriend, Debbie Glatzel, and her family when the horror first began. It started with her little brother, 11-year-old David Glatzel. The boy had begun waking up screaming, claiming he was being tormented by a dark entity. He described it as a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes, sharp claws, and jagged teeth. It whispered to him at night, promising to take his soul. Soon, David's behavior turned erratic. He spoke in languages he had never learned, growled like an animal, and lashed out violently at his family. Bruises and scratches appeared on his body overnight, as if something unseen had attacked him. Desperate, the Glatzel family turned to renowned demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren. After observing David, the Warrens were convinced he was possessed. The exorcism and the deadly pact. A series of exorcisms were performed, attended by priests, the Warrens, and members of the family. David convulsed, screamed in agony, and levitated. Witnesses swore that unseen hands choked him, his small body contorting in impossible ways. During one of the exorcisms, Arne Johnson, David's sister's boyfriend, challenged the demon. He shouted at the entity, demanding it leave the boy and enter him instead. And that's exactly what happened. A mind no longer. His own, after that night, Arne changed. He became withdrawn, agitated, and prone to fits of rage. He claimed he saw a dark figure lurking in the corners of his vision, watching him, waiting. He would black out, only to wake up hours later with no memory of what had happened. Then, on that fateful day in February, Arne and his landlord Alan Bono got into an argument. Witnesses say Arne's eyes went completely black before he let out a guttural growl and lunged at Bono with a knife. The attack was frenzied, brutal, inhuman. Bono was stabbed over 20 times. The trial that shook the nation. When Arne was arrested, he showed no remorse because he claimed he had no memory of the killing. And for the first time in U.S. legal history, a defense attorney attempted to use demonic possession as a defense in court. The Warrens testified that Arne had been overtaken by a malevolent force, that he had become a puppet for something far worse than madness. The court didn't accept the supernatural defense, but the case sparked a national debate about the true nature of evil. Arne was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison, but served only 5. Some say the demon eventually left him. Others believe it's just lying dormant, waiting. Could this happen again? If a demon could possess a child, then jump to someone else, what's stopping it from happening again? Would you ever challenge an entity, daring it to take you instead? Or do you believe Arne Johnson's story was just a desperate man trying to escape justice? Tell us in the comments, if you dare. The possession of Julia, a case. So disturbing, even scientists believed it. Science couldn't explain what we saw. In the shadowed corridors of medical science, where rational thought reigns supreme, there exists one case so terrifying, so unexplainable, that even hardened scientists walked away believing in the supernatural. Her name was Julia. Unlike many possession cases, Julia was no child, no religious zealot. She was a self-proclaimed Satanist, someone who willingly invited dark forces into her life. But whatever she had conjured refused to leave. Doctors, priests, and psychologists bore witness to horrors beyond reason. Objects moved on their own. Julia spoke languages she had never learned. And worst of all, something watched from the shadows, the first signs of darkness. Julia's torment began subtly. Strange shadows followed her, whispering her name in empty rooms. She woke with claw-like scratches running down her arms, and at night, unseen hands dragged her from her bed. Her voice wasn't her own anymore. It shifted, deep, guttural, inhuman. Her eyes turned pitch black without warning. Then came the visions. She claimed to see monstrous figures lurking in mirrors and walls, creatures with twisted, gaping maws, waiting, hungry. Terrified, she sought help, not from her fellow Satanists, but from science itself. Doctors and scientists entered the nightmare. Unlike many possession stories, Julia's case was heavily documented by medical professionals. Dr. Richard Gallagher, a board-certified psychiatrist and professor at Columbia University, was called in to assess her condition. What he saw defied every logical explanation. During their meetings, Julia spoke in multiple voices at once, a horrifying chorus of men, women, and something else entirely. At times, she would levitate off her bed, her body twisting unnaturally. Phones rang with no one on the line. Lights flickered. Objects flew across the room. Even when Julia wasn't present, strange disturbances followed the doctors and researchers. Their homes were invaded by nightmares, shadowy figures watching from the corners of their rooms. Something had attached itself to Julia, and now it had spread to everyone involved. The exorcism, a battle for a soul. Realizing the entity was beyond science's grasp, Julia agreed to an exorcism. What followed was pure horror. As the priest began the rite, Julia screamed in agony, her voice splitting into multiple tones. Her body convulsed, her spine arching so violently it seemed it would snap. Then, she spoke in Latin, Spanish, and ancient Greek, languages she had never studied. The room grew ice cold. Witnesses swore they saw shadowy figures moving along the walls, creeping closer. At one point, Julia's eyes rolled back, and she let out a guttural laugh that didn't sound human. Then, the final horror. Her voice deepened, filled with a venomous malice, and it uttered, "You will all die." One of the priests collapsed. A doctor fled the room, swearing he felt hands wrap around his throat. And just like that, the exorcism failed. Julia refused to continue. Whatever was inside her didn't want to leave, and she didn't want it gone. The unfinished horror. Julia vanished soon after, never completing another exorcism. To this day, her fate remains unknown. But those who witnessed her possession never forgot. Dr. Gallagher, once a skeptic, admitted, "This was real. I have no other explanation." Is possession real? Julia's case is one of the few scientifically documented possessions in history. But if science itself couldn't explain what happened, then what does that say about the world we think we know? Do you believe in demonic possession? Or do you think Julia's case had another explanation? Let us know in the comments, if you dare. The Smurl family haunting, a poltergeist that became something worse. It started with strange noises. Then, it wanted their souls. At first, it was just scratches in the walls, a faint tapping in the dead of night. Then came the foul stench, like rotting flesh. And then, it spoke. The Smurl family thought they had found their dream home in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. But what they got was a nightmare that lasted over a decade. A haunting so terrifying that even demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren were left shaken. What began as a simple poltergeist soon grew into something far more sinister. A home infested with darkness. Jack and Janet Smurl, along with their daughters and Jack's parents, moved into the house in 1974. It wasn't long before strange occurrences began. Furniture moved on its own. Deep claw marks appeared on the walls. Electrical appliances flickered and malfunctioned. At night, the family heard groaning voices echoing through the halls, and an overwhelming stench of decay filled the rooms. Then, shadowy figures started to appear, flickering at the edges of their vision. Whatever was haunting them, it was watching. From poltergeist to possession, the entity's activity grew more violent. Jack was attacked in his sleep, a force pinning him down, whispering in his ear. Janet was lifted off the bed and hurled across the room. Their daughters woke up screaming as something unseen pulled their blankets away. One night, as Jack lay in bed, an invisible force climbed on top of him. He later described the feeling as being violated by an inhuman presence. Something evil had infested their home. The Warrens investigate. Terrified and desperate, the Smurls called in Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famed paranormal investigators. As soon as Lorraine stepped inside, she knew there was more than one spirit here. A restless, angry soul, likely someone who had died in the house. A poltergeist feeding on the family's fear. And worst of all, a demonic entity. Lorraine described seeing a black mass that moved with malicious intent, twisting through the house like living smoke. During their investigation, Ed Warren was nearly attacked when a massive shadow lunged at him. It was pure evil, Lorraine later recalled, and it wasn't going to leave willingly. The failed exorcisms priests were brought in. Blessings were performed. Holy water was sprinkled. But the entity only grew angrier. Objects levitated and crashed against the walls. The family suffered scratches, burns, and bruises. Dark whispers turned into blood-curdling screams. After multiple failed exorcisms, the Smurls fled their home. But even then, the entity followed them. Was it ever truly the house that was haunted, or the family itself? The unfinished nightmare. In 1987, an exorcism was finally performed by the Catholic Church, and the activity lessened. But the Smurls claimed something never fully left. Even after moving away, Janet reported strange occurrences, faint whispers, objects shifting in the night, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. A true demonic infestation. Was this truly a case of demonic possession? Or could fear, stress, and trauma have fueled the haunting? The Smurl case remains one of the most chilling and controversial hauntings in history, one that even skeptics struggle to explain. Would you have stayed in the house, or would you have fled? Let us know in the comments, if you dare. The case of Latoya Ammons, the woman who was allegedly possessed, along with her children. Their eyes rolled back, and they walked up the walls. When the Ammons family moved into their rental home in Gary, Indiana, in 2011, they never expected to find themselves at the center of one of the most terrifying documented cases of possession in modern history. What started as strange noises in the night quickly turned into a living nightmare, one that shocked police officers, social workers, and even medical professionals. This wasn't just a haunted house, it was something worse. The signs of an evil presence. It began subtly. Unexplained footsteps echoed through the home. Shadowy figures lurked in the corners. The family found swarming black flies at their windows, even in the dead of winter. Then, the disturbances turned violent. The children spoke in unnatural, guttural voices. Objects moved on their own, thrown by invisible hands. Mysterious scratches and bruises appeared on the children overnight. Latoya and her mother, Rosa Campbell, began to believe something demonic was tormenting them. But then, the possession began. The unbelievable events, witnessed by professionals. One night, Latoya's 12-year-old daughter levitated above her bed, unconscious and completely unresponsive. Terrified, the family sought help from doctors, priests, and even the police. But things only got worse. A demonic voice growled from the children's mouths. One son was thrown across the room by an unseen force. Another child's eyes rolled back as he grinned unnaturally. Then, inside a hospital examination room, something happened that no one could explain. A child walked backward up a wall, flipped over, and landed on his feet. A seasoned hospital nurse ran out screaming. A social worker refused to return to the room. Even hardened police officers were shaken. Whatever was haunting the Ammons family, it was real. The exorcism and the escape. Desperate for help, the family turned to Father Michael Maginot, a Catholic priest. He confirmed what the Ammons family feared. Their home was infested with demons. Prayers and blessings had no effect. The air grew thick with a suffocating presence. Latoya herself appeared possessed, eyes dark, voice distorted. Father Maginot performed a grueling exorcism, invoking the names of holy saints, commanding the demons to leave. For hours, Latoya convulsed and screamed, her body twisting unnaturally. When the final rite was completed, the house fell silent. The Ammons family fled the home forever. A house of true evil. After their departure, investigators discovered something terrifying beneath the house. A hidden room filled with ritualistic objects, bones, and dark stains. To this day, many believe the house was a gateway to something evil, so much so that in 2016, the infamous Demon House was demolished. But the question remains, did destroying the house end the haunting? Or did whatever lurked within follow the Ammons family wherever they went? Would you have dared to set foot in the Demon House, or would you have burned it to the ground? Let us know in the comments, if you dare. Michael Taylor, a possession that ended in brutal murder. I am the devil, and I must kill her. In the quiet town of Ossett, England, in 1974, Michael Taylor was known as a mild-mannered husband and father. But one night, after a violent exorcism, something inside him snapped. By morning, he had brutally murdered his wife, and what he did to her body was so horrific that even police officers recoiled in terror. What took hold of Michael Taylor that night? Was it a mental break, or something much, much worse? A devoted man, or a possessed one? Michael and his wife, Christine, were a religious couple, deeply involved in their local Christian fellowship group. But things took a dark turn when Michael became obsessed with the group's leader, a charismatic young woman named Marie Robinson. Christine, sensing that something was wrong, confronted him. That's when Michael's demeanor changed. His eyes turned wild. He lashed out violently, screaming blasphemies. He claimed an evil force had taken hold of him. The church elders believed Michael was possessed. And so, a terrifying all-night exorcism began. The exorcism that unleashed a monster. On the night of October 5th, 1974, a group of priests gathered at St. Thomas's Church to perform a grueling, hours-long exorcism. For nearly 8 hours they prayed, chanted, and commanded the demons to leave. Michael convulsed violently. He screamed in tongues. He spat, clawed, and growled like a wild animal. By dawn, the priests claimed they had cast out 40 demons, but they weren't able to remove the last few, those of insanity, murder, and violence. And then, they made a fatal mistake. They let Michael go home. The brutal murder that followed just hours after returning home, something took over Michael completely. He snapped. He attacked Christine with his bare hands, gouging out her eyes and tearing away her face. He strangled their family dog, ripping it apart limb by limb. Covered in blood, he wandered the streets, naked, muttering about the devil. When police arrived, they found Christine's mutilated body, her face completely unrecognizable. One officer later said it was the most horrifying crime scene he had ever witnessed. Possession or madness? At his trial, Michael claimed he had no memory of the murder, only that he felt something dark and evil inside him. The jury found him not guilty by reason of insanity, believing he had suffered a complete psychotic breakdown. But the priests who had exorcised him believed differently. To them, Michael Taylor was living proof that some demons can never be cast out. Did an evil force truly possess Michael Taylor? Was he simply a man driven to madness by religious hysteria? Or did something inhuman take hold of him that night? And most chillingly, if the last demons were never exorcised, where did they go? Would you dare to look into Michael Taylor's eyes and tell him he wasn't possessed? Or would you fear that something was still lurking inside him, waiting to return? The Tanaku exorcism, a possession that led to tragedy. The devil must be driven out, even if it costs her life. In 2005, deep in rural Romania, a terrifying exorcism took place in the secluded Tanaku monastery. A young nun, Marisica Irina Cornici, was bound, starved, and subjected to brutal rituals to expel what the priests believed was a demonic force inside her. She didn't survive. But those involved in her exorcism claimed she wasn't killed, she was saved. Was this a case of religious zeal gone too far, or had something truly sinister possessed her? The first signs of darkness, at just 23 years old, Marisica Cornici had a troubled past. She had grown up in orphanages, struggling with depression and hallucinations. When she arrived at Tanaku Monastery, she hoped for peace and salvation. Instead, her life descended into a nightmare. She began talking to unseen figures. She claimed the devil was whispering to her. She lashed out violently at fellow nuns. The head priest, Father Daniel Petru Korojanu, was convinced she was possessed. And so, he ordered an exorcism. The exorcism that became a torture chamber. Over the course of 3 days, Marisica was subjected to a horrifying ordeal. She was tied to a wooden cross and gagged. She was deprived of food and water, left to weaken the demon. Priests chanted and forced holy water down her throat. She screamed for mercy, but no one listened. On the 3rd day, she fell silent. When doctors arrived, they found her dead. The cause: dehydration and suffocation. Father Korojanu and the nuns were arrested, but they remained unrepentant. She was already dead inside. At the trial, Korojanu insisted that Marisica had been beyond medical help. He claimed modern medicine didn't understand demonic possession. He argued that she died because the demon took her soul, not because of the exorcism. Other nuns testified that after her death, the monastery felt peaceful, as if an evil force had finally left. Korogianu was sentenced to 7 years in prison. But chillingly, after his release, he claimed he would do it all again. Possession or madness? Was Maritsika Kornishi truly possessed? Or was she just a young woman suffering from mental illness in the wrong place at the wrong time? And if this was really just a case of hysteria, why do visitors to Tanaku Monastery report hearing a woman's voice crying out at night, begging for help that never comes? Would you have tried to save her? Or would you have been too afraid that the devil was watching, waiting for his next victim? The chilling possession of Anelise Michelle, the most infamous exorcism case in history. I am Lucifer. I am Judas. I am Nero. She belongs to us now. In 1976, in a quiet German town, a young woman screamed in voices not her own. She spoke in dead languages, recoiled from holy objects, and claimed her soul had been claimed by demons. Her name was Anelise Michelle, and her story became the most infamous exorcism case in history. But was she truly possessed? Or was she the tragic victim of religious hysteria and neglect? The descent into darkness. Anelise Michelle was just 16 years old when it began. She started blacking out without warning. She saw dark figures creeping through her bedroom. She heard whispers in the night that no one else could hear. Doctors diagnosed her with epilepsy, but the medications did nothing. The visions worsened. She claimed she was being choked by unseen hands. She saw the devil's face staring at her from the walls. She screamed that she was damned for eternity. When medical science failed her, her deeply religious family turned to the church. The exorcism that shook the world. 2 priests, Father Ernst Alt and Father Arnold Rentz, were convinced Annalisa was possessed by multiple demons. Over 10 months, they performed 67 exorcisms. Annalisa spoke in the voices of demons, including Lucifer, Judas Iscariot, and Adolf Hitler. She refused food and water, claiming the demons wouldn't let her eat. She would drop to her knees and stand up hundreds of times a day until her bones shattered. Her body withered. Her voice became a guttural growl, barely human. Then, on July 1st, 1976, Annalisa stopped breathing. Her official cause of death? Malnutrition and dehydration. She was 23 years old. The haunting aftermath. When the case went to trial, the priests and her parents insisted she had been possessed. The tapes of the exorcism played in court, filled with her inhuman screams. Her mother testified that Annalisa had spoken of redemption and sacrifice, believing she had to suffer to save souls. But medical experts argued that she had epilepsy and schizophrenia, and that she was driven to death by religious fanaticism. The priests and her parents were convicted of negligent homicide, but only sentenced to 6 months in prison. The lingering horror. Even today, visitors to Annalisa's grave report strange occurrences. Whispers in the wind, faint scratches appearing on gravestones. A feeling of something watching from the shadows. Some say her suffering was real, that her demons never left. So tell me, do you believe Anelise Michelle was truly possessed? Or was she a victim of a horrifying mistake that ended in tragedy? And if it was possession, then where did those demons go? Some stories have clear endings. This one does not. Because now, you've heard them. You've invited them in. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe when you turn off this video, everything will be normal. But if you hear a faint knock when no one's there, if you feel something cold brush against your skin, if you wake up in the middle of the night, convinced something is watching, don't say we didn't warn you. If you made it this far, you're one of us now. Keep the nightmares coming. Subscribe, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. And remember, They're always watching.